only half of secondary school trainee teachers needed have been recruited this year, according to new government figures. Languages and maths in particular are struggling, with head teachers describing the figures as catastrophic. Well, my next guest joins me after a day of teaching. Lucy Kellaway is the co-founder of Now Teach and gave up her job in journalism to retrain as a teacher. Lucy, good afternoon to you.
Hello.
I'm sure you've had a much more tiring day than me. So thank you very much for coming on the programme. What do you make of these figures? How serious a problem is this?
Yeah, they're absolutely terrible. I mean, as you said in your intro, if you ask any head teacher what their number one problem is, it's staff. It's completely common, and is indeed in the case where I teach in the Northeast, that there are loads of people teaching who really don't know very much about their subjects and are just keeping a lesson ahead of their students. That's absolutely the norm all over the country.
And tell me about the impact on pupils, because we had the UK PISA scores, which are closely watched, showing a sharp decline in performance in the UK, but, also other countries struggled after the pandemic. So in a way, the government sort of spun that as a positive story. But what is the impact of a problem with getting hold of the teachers on the people studying?
Yeah, actually, I mean, I'm slightly with the government on the PISA things being optimistic. I mean, we're doing better than other countries. And I think that shows that teachers just sort of pull everything out of the bag to make sure that their students don't really suffer that much. So, I've referred to people who aren't sort of subject experts. They're really trying to mug up on their subjects,
Wow.
which adds to the pressure that they're already under.
Yeah.
So I think that the pressure really hasn't been felt on students yet, but surely it will be.
Right. OK, well, that's a terrible warning. But I mean, amazing that, as you say, teachers are straining every sinew to reduce that impact. So why are teachers leaving? Or is it just that, that there are more pupils to teach? Or is it a bit of both? And what's the answer?
Well, I think what's really interesting is if you look at the stats in detail, there has been this big fall in younger teachers, especially in the sort of typical 20-something, which is the age group that people generally decide that they want to be teachers. But that has been matched by an increase in the over 40s. I suspect there are lots of reasons for this, but I think one of them is that all the younger teachers I know, it's the last straw that they can't work flexibly when everyone else they know is popping out for a flat white.
Yeah.
My generation never really popped out for a flat white, so we really don't seem to mind that relative privation nearly as much as younger teachers.
That's fascinating. And I hear that constantly, that, other jobs, you can work from home, you can potentially get better pay for easier hours, more flexible hours. So I suppose it does come down to, how do teachers get incentivised? The government is giving bursaries of £25,000 for teachers training in chemistry, computing, languages, maths and physics. Is that going to help? Or has there got to be overall pay rise across the board? In which case, how does the state afford that right now?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's pay, but there are lots of other things that could be done to make it easier. I mean, if the message is coming back saying we need more flexibility, clearly, if you've got a lesson at 9 o'clock, you need to be there at 9 o'clock. But I think schools could relax a bit more and let people not come in if they've got a free first thing, and little things like that would make an enormous difference, especially to younger teachers.
Interesting. Sorry, I was going to say, your charity that you co-founded, Now Teach, to encourage people to shift from other careers into teaching. It seems there's some suggestion from your figures that you just quoted that people over 40 are coming into teaching, whereas, 20-somethings aren't. I mean, that could bear fruit. That could be a good button to press for the government, couldn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, our numbers at Now Teach, I mean, we're sort of in the older range, and some of our recruits are way older. I mean, I was in my late 50s when I started, but our numbers are 66% up on last year. So there is some interesting going on, that I think it's partly a demographic shift, that older people are more and more thinking it's not too late to do something new and do something meaningful, and really aren't that bothered about the fact that, yes, they do actually need to be in school every day.
Mm.
And I think that's really encouraging. The numbers at the moment are still relatively small. I mean, overall, we've brought in about 1,000 teachers into the profession, which clearly isn't going to solve the whole national problem, but it's a really strong sign of which way we're going.
Very
And
interesting.
the government is aware of this and is happy about it.
And I'm hoping that you can sell the benefits of being a teacher. But coupled with that, if you could perhaps address one of the things that may be making teaching very challenging at the moment, which is that post-pandemic, kids, there's a lot of problems out there. Kids have suffered during the pandemic, and that sort of comes home to roost with the teachers, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they really have. And so much that happens at school absolutely breaks your heart. You will teach kids who are in care and kids who are hungry, kids who aren't being well looked after. And it does make the job harder, but equally, it makes it even more important that
Mm.
people who are there who aren't exhausted. If you're expecting teachers to do so much, then they're not going to be able to do that if they're just completely and utterly knackered.
Mm.
And I really don't think that's been addressed at all.
And you said earlier that you sympathised with the government over the PISA scores. You thought they weren't necessarily putting a positive spin on something that was less benign. But Rishi Sunak had this big announcement at conference of ditching A levels in favour of a new baccalaureate. Does that suggest he's not grasping the kind of bread and butter crisis issues on the front line of teaching, or are you a supporter of that policy?
No, I think I just feel classic weary teacher at the sound of that. Kind of think, oh God, not another initiative. I'm not sure I can bear it. I mean, look, the current exam system isn't perfect at all. So I'm not saying it's sort of insane to think about trying to redo it. I don't like the specialisation post 16 either. But I think I would be more inclined to think, hang on, look, we are where we are. Let's try and make small improvements. Let's try and make teachers a bit happier and a bit more motivated. Let's try and do what we are doing just a bit better before we start thinking about wholesale reform.
Well, I'm sure you've got lots of marking to get off to, so I'll let you go. Lucy Kellaway, thank you very much. At the end of a busy week of teaching, thank you very much for joining us. Lucy Kellaway there, the co-founder of Now Teach, which encourages people to shift from other professions or careers to become a teacher, retrain as a teacher.